So there is a direct encouragement by Prophet Muhammad for the believers to be likable, to have a very pleasant personality, character, that people around him appreciate that, like enjoy being with him.
ولو أن أهل القرى آمنوا واتقوا لفتحنا عليهم بركات من السماء والأرض.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yaumiddin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to the Barakah Effect podcast, and the topic of our discussion today is how to be more likable at work. So in this episode, inshallah, we'll be talking about the art of collaboration and working with others, basically the habits of likable people and the kind of people who you want to work with, the kind of people who, when you are present, mashallah, you are appreciated, and when you're gone, people are like, oh, where is he? I want to be in the team with him, that kind of thing. So what does it take to be these kinds of people, and is this something that we can learn, or is it something that we're kind of born with, right? So that's what we discuss on how we can inculcate this in our lives, inshallah. So in this topic, we're going to discuss two major themes about, number one, why are we discussing this subject, and who is this subject aimed for? And secondly is the discussion itself. How can we be this great team player and to be more likable? How can we develop this art, this skill to collaborate with others and be versatile in different environments and thrive as a team player? So first and foremost, let's talk about why did we choose this topic, and why is it so significant? And for that, we'll pass it to the one who chose this, which is Brother Amir. Tafaddal.
MashaAllah, barakallah feek, brothers. So why I choose this topic is like at my workplace, I'm actually amazed with certain individual who I look up to, and they always have a very amicable personality at work. Yeah, like just what Brother Faisal mentioned. When they are at work, people actually appreciate them. Sometimes they contribute a lot. People appreciate them for their work, and sometimes they don't. People appreciate them just for their companionship and for their advice. Yeah, and maybe they're not giving 100%, but maybe 50%. But people still appreciate them. And sometimes when they are not there, for instance, if they're not in the meeting, they say, "Oh, I wish we have taken him to the meeting. Yeah, he would have neutralized this person's effect, things like this." So this kind of, and these people are not they're not venomous in personality. They're actually very subtle in the way they speak, in the way they act. Really good character, and I think when I look at these people, mashallah, this is something that we should have, because when you have someone who's very welcoming, that you actually like to be with them, I think two things I noticed. Number one, the teamwork actually becomes stronger with the team, and hence you actually reduce the stress level of working. Actually, people come to work. Maybe sometimes the task might be difficult, but knowing that, okay, I have a team member that's very supportive, that helps me. It kind of like helps me to balance my stress level. And at the same time, when you have that bonding, you deliver more things. If it's just by yourself, you probably perhaps can cover 10 things. But if you have 2%, 3% who's like that, you probably can go further in any work that you do. So I do believe that if we are a person who is like this, who is likable, maybe it will give a lot of positivity in the work that we do, whether it's to ourselves as well as to our team members and colleagues there. So that's why I think maybe it's something that we should discuss this week. Yeah, how to have that likable personality that can really bring a lot of positivity to the people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis.
MashaAllah, very good. Yeah, so I just want to add to that as well. Just to remind where does this all ultimately end up in, is basically Allah tells us in Surah Al-Ma'idah, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, collaborate towards righteousness and piety. Because this is the idea about collaboration, it always yields more than the individual contributions itself. It's not like 1 + 1 = 2. It's actually more than that. And this is true for business in the professional environment, as what Amir is saying. But even more so when it comes to religious efforts, especially when it comes to da'wah, right? Things that we commit for the sake of Allah. Things like charity efforts in sadaqah and da'wah. If we want to realize this, then we have to rectify ourselves first on how we want to realize this collaborative environment. Yeah. So actually just want to share to everyone, actually, on a personal level for me, right? This is actually a skill that I found myself lacking, actually. So years ago, when I did some muhasabah, I realized that, oh man, I really need to work on this. I realized that there are certain characteristics about the way I conduct myself. It's not a very likable kind of guy that you want to have on your teammate. I had this dominant kind of character. I talk people down, and when people, I had differences of opinion with me. I always have this kind of negative perception against them, kind of brush them off. Like your opinion, that kind of thing. So then I realized that after some time, this is not the kind of person people want to work with. So it's something I had to fix. Right. So that's what motivated me. And I feel like this is something that we have to talk about. And now, after years of working right now in the professional environment also, I realized that this kind of skill, this ability to work with others, to be likable, is actually a very sought after skill in the professional world. In many jobs, actually, you cannot avoid not working with others. But the trouble is, actually, many employers and companies, actually, they don't realize or acknowledge it. Do you guys notice this? Like in the interviews, like then very few questions that aim towards uncovering this aspect. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly.
True.
So it's like we all know it's important, but somehow we don't flesh it out. You know what I mean? So right, kind of a gap there, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to share some personal anecdotal observations. This is just my, maybe it's a limited perspective, but just want to share like some observations from my personal experience in my workplace. Yeah, so I've seen at firsthand within our own engineering team, two extremes when it comes to this kind of team playerness. Yeah, so on one hand, I have this one guy, really brilliant guy, mashallah. He's excellent at his job, very sharp, very efficient at his work, does it very quickly, strong business acumen, has this unique ability of relating technical engineering work to real life practical application. And he's quite new, but I think his technical knowledge is even better than the seniors. So, right, he's pretty good, right? Pretty kind of high flyer guy, right?
Yeah.
But he has one problem. He's very rude. He's very obnoxious to work with. And he's very intelligent, and he knows he's intelligent. So this kind of makes him kind of arrogant. And because of that, it's very difficult to work with him. And, he will always make condescending remarks against other people. Whenever he'll trigger very, remarks like insulting things towards other team members. And whenever he does something, he kind of keeps it to himself. Selfish kind of guy. And so when I got to know, when I started to work with him, I thought to myself, this guy is brilliant, but at this rate, if he keeps burning bridges, I don't think he'll really realize his potential, man. Because he's brilliant, right? But at this rate, I don't think he'll go very far. And true enough, I found out later on, his performance ratings, despite his brilliance, is not been very good. In fact, he has been one of the bottom performers in succession, actually. So I thought, oh, wow. In fact, he actually got on. Yeah, what happened, right? So eventually, because of his personality, he got on the bad side on some of his managers because of this kind of rebellious kind of character, subhanAllah. And on the other hand, I've seen the other extreme as well. So I've seen some people who are maybe not necessarily so, not the sharpest tool in the shed, maybe not so intelligent, but because they have a very, mashallah, very collaborative team spirit, they have this humility to learn, they collaborate well with others, they grow. Not so fast, they grow steadily, but because they build the solid relationships, right? As they grow, and then when they do get promoted, they become very loved and liked leaders who inspire a lot of loyalty and collaboration. So I think, when you look at it in the beginning, in hindsight, when you first start off, you have this mindset that this kind of aggressive behavior, that's what gets you hit, right? But actually, when you draw it up, you kind of like, you realize a different perspective on the hikmah now.
And to tie to that, right? Like before that, like the driver for me to be likable at work, and even in personal life, there's a lot of you can tie that to religious objective to be likable by your family members. But at work, in the past, I always tie this to like a dollar and cent, like for you to be likable at work. So because one day all of us will be promoted, and we'll need to work with people. And if we burn bridges early up front, then we have no one to work with, no one we can trust on. So it's always like I tie to likable to some monetary means or growth or material growth. Yeah. But then what surprised me was that when researching this topic, then I found that there's two hadith. This is like both are related Hassan. One is like the believer is friendly and likable, and there is no good in the one who is not friendly nor likable. And the best of them are the most beneficial to the people. So there is a direct encouragement by Prophet Muhammad for the believers to be likable, to have a very pleasant personality, character that people around him appreciate, that like enjoy being with him. Yeah.
Sure.
And this is part of also good akhlak. Yeah. So now we are Muslim, we have got another motivation
right?
for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the
So-
primary motivation right now, is because Rasulullah told us to do that. Told us to be a
Yeah.
likable personality. Yep.
Islam really, how to say, it's a religion of fitrah. It's we are humans, right? We need to work with others, so we need this skill to interact with people. We need to be likable. So when I heard the hadith just now for the first time, I was like, subhanallah, being likable is sunnah.
Mashallah. Mashallah. I mean, reflecting all of the points the brothers mentioned before on the hadith, and also Brother Faisal's personal experience at work. Actually, in my workplace as well, it's a client-facing sort of workplace and environment whereby actually when you think about it, the real barometer of success is not really your technical acumen per se, but just how you deal with clients and how clients reciprocate to how you deal with them, interact with them. So
That's true.
that actually progresses a project and makes it successful, or makes it usually unsuccessful as well. And even some clients you see, sometimes some clients they don't have this particular likable quality, then it usually makes the project very difficult. So actually when I observe also things in my workplace from ourselves and from the clients, being likable on both sides is something that helps the success of a particular project. So this is really important. Yeah.
Mashallah.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I just want to add, inshallah, perhaps all these things, it reminds me of a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, he told us that among the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent him, Allah sent him to this nation, is first and foremost to uphold Tawheed, right? The oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also sent the Prophet ﷺ as a mercy for mankind. But one might ask, what does it mean to have the Prophet ﷺ to be the mercy for mankind, right? But there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, "Inni lam ub'ath la'anan wa inni bu'ithtu rahmatan." So it means I was not sent to invoke curses. Meaning this includes all the vulgar things that you might see, or action-wise, or the speech that one shows, right? But the Prophet ﷺ continued by saying, but rather I was only sent as a mercy. Subhanallah. So the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ shows through his daily, his mu'amalah with the people around him, and how friendly he is, subhanallah. And therefore he said in another hadith, "Ar-rahimuna yarhamuhumur rahman, irhamu man fil ardi yarhamukum man fis sama." Right? The Prophet ﷺ said, the merciful will be shown mercy by the all merciful. Subhanallah. So be merciful to those who are on earth, meaning those around you, your friends, your family, your colleagues, right? And the one who is above the heavens will have mercy upon you. Subhanallah, brothers. This is something that we all should strive for, right? Having, attaining the mercy from the most merciful. So this is very important topic to discuss, inshallah.
Yeah, and it's like for instance, like being merciful to people, because like people say that how's the best way to actually get to other people's heart, right? Like some people say like the best way to the husband's heart is from good cooking by the wife, yeah. For average people, some scholars say that the best way to a person's heart is through good akhlaq. Even though to a good character, good morals, even though some people they might have tendency that they like money, they like power. Okay, maybe they will not see the akhlaq at first, but eventually throughout time, if the person keeps on showing good akhlaq throughout time, he will eventually realize that as well. Maybe at start he doesn't appreciate that good akhlaq. He only likes material things, but eventually he will still get it to him. Even it's just a matter of time. So the best way to a person's heart is good akhlaq to another person.
You know, when Amir said this, it reminds me something of what my parents used to tell me. I'm just reminded of this right now. They're telling me that, you know how a lot of government officers, when they retire, normally you expect them to be like chairman for some organization, like board of directors, that kind of role, right? But
Yeah.
so what my parents were telling me is that some of them, when they were in government positions, when they had that authority, they were very mean to people. The akhlaq was, not not very likable. Let's put it that way. And then once they retired, they will show. Nobody will call them. And then they are the ones who
Okay.
express to my father, they're like, tak ada orang pun call I. Like nobody's calling me. Nobody's inviting me to be board of directors, that kind of thing. And so my father was the one who's telling me, because when he was in power, because when he was in authority, we need to seek him. Oh, he was very mean to us. He was very, and then now, who want to work with this kind of people? So actually, it will catch up with you sooner or later. If it's not in this world, in the hereafter.
Subhanallah.
And maybe just to add
Mashallah.
as well, something about just the context of why it's important to talk about this idea of collaboration. It's not just the professional environment, but also the reason we need to speak about this is because of the need to collaborate in da'wah. And in the past, I just want to share with everyone, I've been quite actively collaborating and volunteering for different organizations and different types of activities. And I saw a very troubling trend. And I noticed that it's very difficult for Muslims to get along. Subhanallah. Like in my observation, it's so difficult for Islamic organizations to hold it together for a long duration. It's always usually fractured or they are gone. Sometimes what happens is there's a discussion, there's a disagreement, it gets heated up, it blows up, people leave group. Then they say, I don't want to do anything with this guy anymore, right? You guys seen that, right? We have been in some of those groups as well, right? Sometimes because of these simple disagreements, they sever the personal friendships that they have. Right? Before that, they were friends, and then it's gone. And then sometimes I notice this trend as well, like people study a bit of knowledge. Alhamdulillah, Allah give them some knowledge. But what happens is they become very firm in their conviction, and then they become very, very confident with the explanation of the shuyukh they study with. But what happens is they impose their opinion. They didn't want to listen to other people. So what happens is some du'at, it kind of gets to their heads as well. They realize, you know what? I don't need this organization. I can do well by myself. Then they break away, they break up, they leave, they form new organizations. What happens to the previous organizations? Some of them try to soldier on, but not so strong. They were limping, right? Not so strong because they lost their star players. And then they build new organization. And sometimes that new organization also fractures even some more. Who loses? The ummah loses, the students, the followers, right? So that's the thing, right? So I feel like at this rate, if this is the kind of fracturing that we have, if it's difficult to collaborate, da'wah organizations are so volatile. We don't get a steady momentum, that we don't have that collective strength of a jama'ah. So we don't really get to fully realize that ta'awanu 'alal birri wa taqwa. So I feel that this is why this is something we should really emphasize on, so that we can really learn to get the sum of its parts when it comes to collaborating for the sake of Allah. So let's go to the second part of the discussion now. So let's discuss this. How do we develop this? How do we develop this likable trait? This how do we hone this art of working with others and to be a great team player?
Yeah, I when I try to do a bit more research on this topic, a lot of the points, not from an Islamic perspective, but even from Western motivators, they come up with a lot of tips that suggest a strong connection to morals, characters, and for Muslim perspective, is akhlaq, and just like what I gather from a scholar, they say that the best way to a person's heart is through good akhlaq. I like and our scholars has come up with so many overview pillars on how you actually should, because when you talk about the subject of akhlaq, it's a lot, it's immense. You can to have practicing akhlaq, all of it is difficult. So maybe we one way I from my research is that maybe we can channel it through certain to pillars, so you're easy to focus on your effort. So what I like is one is from Hasan al-Basri, when people say, what do you mean by good akhlaq? So good akhlaq is three, pretty much to say that number one, you remove harm from others, and you don't actually inflict harm upon others. So the first one. The second one is actually you be a source of kindness to him, I mean you help them with something. And the third one is be pleasant to them. So that's just a generic overview. That's from Hasan al-Basri. But from another scholars like Ibn Rajab, he mentioned that the four pillars of good akhlaq is that number one, you constrain your tongue to only speak good things. And like gossip is actually one of the things that gets people riled up in the office. Yeah, gossip, insult, giving condescending remarks. That what Brother Faisal mentioned. That is one of the things that hits up all the office dramas. Like all everything got boiled up because of this, because of the tongue at the workplace. Number that's the first one. Like control your tongue. Speak only good things. Number two is like stay away from things that doesn't benefit you, that doesn't involve you, that doesn't concern you. Sorry, things that doesn't concern you, stay away from it. Yeah, like focus on the work you do, focus on the team you have, on the friends you actually have established. Focus on that more. And number three is do not be angry. Do never be angry. Always have your anger checked. And number four, really love for others what you love for yourself. Meaning you share goodness to others as how you want that goodness to come to you. So that's what Ibn Rajab mentioned. Like when he quoted another scholar from the Malik madhab on four pillars of good akhlaq. These are just overview. The details are, inshallah, we will talk about it later. And another one I'd like to share is from Ibn Qayyim. I mentioned like when you say about good akhlaq, it's tied down to these things, like having patience, preserving your self-dignity. When say preserving your self-dignity, meaning like you always want to do good to people, but not to the point that it actually pulls you down, like morally makes you wrong. Yeah, don't do. I mean, you do good to people, but make sure you do not tarnish your own reputation. You do not do things that might jeopardize your integrity, your dignity, your records. Yeah, and third is having courage. Having courage, like for instance, like if you need to stop harm on your colleague, yeah, like you need to back him up. You back him up. Yeah, you have that courage to say, hey, Mr. So and so, I've known him for 5 years. I worked with him on a lot of projects. He's actually a good guy. I mean, have that courage, yeah. And you've seen him being harassed, and if he feel unable to ask for help, you be that person to ask for help. And when you see he's being harassed, you be the guy to stop that harassment. Yeah, have that courage, and also like have a sense of justice. Like know what rights that you should give your colleagues, and fulfill that rights. Yeah, this is just overview. Yeah,
maybe just to share as well. Maybe some people, when they hear these concepts for the first time, right, they might feel intimidated by the idea. Oh, mashallah, so many different guidelines, so many different hadith. So I think just to give some suggestions as a starting point, if you want to have like an idea about what it means to collaborate well with others and to be more likable, first ask yourself, what is the kind of person you enjoy working with? Right? So I relate back to this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ says, you do not have true iman until you love for others what you love for yourself. So what's the kind of team members that you love to get along with? So I'm sure we have that kind of person, right? So for example, somebody says that, oh, Brother Aziz, you're going to work with Shahmi. They go like, yes. Yeah, and then, or maybe you might have somebody who says, oh, Brother Aziz, you're going to work with Fulan. Huh? What? For real? Yeah, for real. So I'm sure all of us have that, right? At least more than one. We have a few, right? So ask yourself, what makes you so excited to work with that person who you are excited to work with? And at the same time, what are the characteristics that person that you don't really like to work with? What are those things that upset you when it comes to working with them? So actually, if you can do that, most likely those characteristics that are positive about them, most likely, inshallah, you'll be able to find a hadith about that, inshallah.
Yes. Like smile, right? Always smile.
Yeah. Call them by the proper calling. Like, and I think this also needs a bit like understanding of the company's culture or the people's culture. Yeah. So for instance, like some culture, they like it feels closer when you call them by their first name.
Oh,
but not all cultures are like that, right? Sometimes you might be working with someone more senior, and you can call, hey Jeff. He might feel offended. Maybe he's like 60 years old. Oh, what is punks like calling me Jeff? Mr. Jeff for you. I mean, I have a bit of appreciation for culture differences. Yeah, like and certain culture, for instance, it's actually harmful to call them by their complete full name. It's like it's very confrontational. Like his name's like Jonathan Chin something Yensing, for instance. Do not call him by his full name. calling the John. Sorry, what's up, man? What, I did something wrong?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I have some appreciation to that. Yeah, culture. I mean, understand the culture, the culture you're working at, the organization culture. Yeah, have a bit some appreciation on that. Yeah.
Right.
Speaking about name, right? Remembering people's name. I remember this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That is one of the 6 ways to make people like you. Is remember a person's name, because for that
Okay.
person, his name, or when someone call out, someone remember our name, we will surely, oh, this guy remember me, right?
Mashallah.
Because a person's name is the Kenagi said that a person's name is the sweetest or the most sound in any language for that person. For you, if you remember, or if someone is maybe your boss or your manager or any CEO, if they remember your name, you would be like, wow, he remember my name.
Yeah.
You surely
Mm.
like him.
It's like
Attention to small details really make a difference. For example,
Yep.
that skill that Brother Aziz mentioned, if one can pay attention to that skill and just let's say practice it in the workplace, I think that will enhance the working relationship in the sense that, okay, the receiving person will say, wow, okay, that person remembered my name. Oh, it means a lot to people, So those are the things, like sometimes it just looks like something small, but actually it can really emphasize how likable a person can be with these small details. So as Brother Faisal mentioned also as well, it's a list of skills. I always thought, when I see people who are very charismatic at work, very likable at work, a lot of people seems like they are like, born with it or naturals with it, but actually these things, there are skills that can be really learned. But the thing on us, for some people that may perhaps are not natural to it, we can hone it and refine it as we experience more and more in our workplace and our daily dealings, that we can inculcate it to become our characteristic. And especially reflecting on the many hadith of how Rasulullah SAW treated the people around him. This is a great way to gain inspiration to, like, let's say you look at a hadith, for example, how Rasulullah treated the young. For example, how he treated Anas bin Malik. Anas mentioned in the hadith that he never admonished him, like, why did you do such and such, so basically it didn't admonish him in a harsh way. So looking at that hadith, for example, we can, let's say, just reflect on the hadith and try to implement it in the workplace, like one hadith at a time. So after a while, you find that you incorporate so many good things from the akhlaq of Rasulullah SAW, that it becomes part of your character, inshallah, in the workplace. So this is one way to go about it, inshallah, as well.
Can I'd like to tie the points between Brother Aziz and Brother Reza. Just not like Aziz mentioned about remembering names, yeah, and then Brother Aziz mentioned about like the fine details, picking up those fine details in the conversation, yeah. Because sometimes what people had is like, this water cooler talk, it kind of end there and nothing happens after that. But sometimes if you pay a bit more attention, you pick up maybe some weak signals from his work, and maybe the next time when we had the conversation, you ask about that. Hey, I heard about how's it going with that project? Yeah, I mean, it must be and give some encouragement to them. Like, I heard that project is tough. I think only tough guys do tough projects. Something like that. Give some encouragement. Yeah, like but pay attention. So on the next conversation, it's not you start fresh, but you start from somewhere. You continue from somewhere you have done it. You have left in the previous conversation. Yeah, or maybe he talks about like his vacation in a particular place. And then next time, then the next maybe you see him maybe after 3 months or 6 months. Are you gonna revisit the place again, or continue from where you left off? Yeah.
It's like having high emotional intelligence and emotional awareness.
That's right, indeed.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I want to pick up on what Reza mentioned as well. So actually, the essential characteristic to be likable is actually sabr. When you all ground it back, it all comes down to patience first. Right. So even if, for example, what Amir mentioned, right, the pillars of good akhlaq: do not harm, leave off what benefits you, do not get angry. all of this can only be made possible with sabar.
Sabar.
So the hadith that for me, like, if we want to really ground to be likable and to be a better team player at work, is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, the Muslim that mixes with people and is patient with their harm is better than the Muslim who does not mix with the people and is not patient with their harm. And in the narration, it says, the believer who mixes with people and bears the annoyance will have a greater reward than the one who doesn't mix and doesn't put up with their annoyance. So actually, the key to having a great team player is to have the sabar. And it's a specific kind of sabar, right? Which is the sabar of putting up with people. You know, I'm sure you've heard this kind of statement all the time. They say, you know, work is difficult, it's challenging, but it's okay. It's the people that I cannot tahan. I cannot stand. You hear this, right?
All the time.
All the time, right? And the way people say it is as if, oh, the problem is my culture, my workplace, my office, my organization. No, my friend, everyone faces this. The problem, it's a people challenge. This is sunnatullah. This is how Allah created human beings. It is supposed to be challenging. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ put a higher level of reward for those who can mix and bear their harm, right? So if you have the sabar with other people, right? Yeah,
indeed, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You get the extra rewards, right? The multipliers go up, right? Yeah. So when you have the sabar, that's when you can put up with other people's antics. Right? People have all sorts of, comes in all shapes, sizes, and mushkilas, right? And when you have the sabar, that's when you can respect them, even if you differ with them on personal principles. That's not easy to do, yeah, because in the workplace you meet all sorts of different type of people, right? And then when you have sabar, this is when you can refrain from imposing your opinion, because sometimes that's for the greater good. That's not easy to do. That requires sabar, right? And for you to listen to others, even if you think that your opinion is superior, that requires sabar, right? Restraining yourself for anger, that is a trait of a super important to be likable, right? That requires immense sabar, right? And even if you speak about like things like what Reza and Amir said, right? To say positive things, to remain optimistic when you're under stress. Oh man, that is a lot of patience required, right? That's the thing that we can learn from the Prophet ﷺ, like what Reza is saying, right? Anas bin Malik. Can you imagine? He served the Prophet for 10 years. Every day he met the Prophet. Never once did he get, rebuked by him. Wow, can you go for 10 days without rebuking your son? So difficult. Subhanallah. Yeah. So patience, the core here is patience. And I think gearing back to what Riza is saying as well, sometimes you feel like, oh, maybe it's not born in me. But the good news is it can be shaped. Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ says, وَمَنْ يَتَصَبَّرْ يُصَبِّرْهُ اللَّهُ. Whoever tries to be patient, Allah will make him patient. So pretend to be optimistic, pretend to be not hot-tempered, pretend to be, respect people's opinion, and eventually you will respect. So, mashallah, I think this is really interesting.
When you have sabar as well, right? Like when you have sabar, and you couple that with being calm and don't jump into conclusion, and that don't have knee-jerk reactions, yeah. You actually think better, yeah. You can actually come up with a better conversation, especially when you're in very difficult situation. You always look highly on the people who's always optimistic when there's difficult times.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, this guy is an excellent. He's always optimistic, and that one of the things that comes from that, the origin place is sabar. Because you hold yourself from jumping the gun in making any comments, and you use your brain to actually think and filter whatever is bad and only speak what is good, and which is to always come up with to look things in a positive light in all difficult scenarios, yeah. And also when sabar, when we talk about sabar, sometimes this is like in workplace, competition is there, yeah. Where there's competition within the team, amongst the team, there will be competition. But if you have sabar, try not to compete when possible. For instance, avoid, do your best, but not trying to compete against your members, your team members, yeah. So you foster a better relationship. So people say, this is not my rival, he's actually my colleague. So even though you're gonna give like something, like for instance, you and your team members, you have come up with some really good plans, yeah. When you present that point, split the credits, yeah. You don't have to take all the credits to yourself. Split the credit, so you know that this is actually it's a team effort. It's much better, even though maybe certain organization they say, oh, this guy is not he's not the alpha male in the office. Yeah, he shares his credit. It's okay. I'm okay. I Rizki is from Allah. It's not from you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
this
have my
reminds me
identity
of
of
the
work. Yeah.
yeah, this reminds me of thing win-win.
Think
Think
win-win.
win-win.
Yeah, in the 7 habits, right? Yeah.
And actually, if you think about it, having sabar in the workplace, not competing with others just for the sake of being competition, having high competition, actually all these, how does one get about having all these qualities is actually to start with having the mindset of ibadah, work as ibadah. When you do your work as an act of ibadah, automatically, inshallah, Allah will grant you the means to have sabr in the workplace, because the hat that you're wearing in the workplace, when you have this mindset, is that okay, you are here to find rizq, you are here to make the effort to get the rizq for your family, for example. So it becomes something that you do, say, for the sake of Allah, because it's an ibadah. And if you think about it that way, then the qualities that are in your fitrah is much easier to attain, because you are thinking from the angle of it being an ibadah and not just for the sake of the dunya per se. So perhaps to start with the mindset of the akhirah, and I mean in everything we do, we should do that, but also especially in the workplace, if we think of it as we are going for work to please Allah, to hope to attain mercy from the most merciful, then that's a good place to start, so that you can easily try to have these kind of qualities, such as sabr, such as having good akhlaq in the workplace. So perhaps that's a good mindset or a place to start from.
Yeah, mashallah. And maybe one of the ways that we can inculcate that feeling of, I'm doing this for the sake of Allah, I'm doing that for the sake of Allah, right? Is to continuously, whenever we have the time, maybe sit down and be with the scholars and probably read a couple of hadith, or just reflect on the meanings of the Quran, right? Because it's subhanallah, Allah is filled with motivations. If you do this, then you will get this. So just sitting down and reading that and absorbing all this, these words of wisdom from Rabbil Alameen, I believe that's enough motivation for us. There's a hadith that I think that might motivate us. I'm sure that it motivated me when it comes to critical situations, especially with the children, and dealing with them, right? Sometimes you get to the boiling point where you just want to blow up, right? So this hadith where the Prophet he said it beautifully. He said, "Inna Allah rafiq, wa yuhibbu rifqa." Indeed, Allah is kind and He loves kindness. And then He said, "Wa yu'ti ala rifqa ma la yu'ti ala al-unf." And He rewards for kindness what is not granted for harshness. Subhanallah. And then He said, He does not reward anything else like it. So imagine if the Prophet said that, that means the reward must be so big, so immense. He does not reward anything else like it. And what can be more immense than to be protected from the hellfire, right? So that's why in another hadith, the Prophet he said, "Ittaqun nara walau bishikki tamra." He said, "Fear or guard yourself from the hellfire, even if it's with half a date." So when sadaqah is something that is important in Islam. We give sadaqah, we give charity to people. So the Prophet said, if you have half a date, give it away to those who need it. And then he said something that is relevant to this discussion. He said, if he cannot find it, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَبِكَلِمَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ. He said, if he cannot find it, then with a kind word. So a kind word, brothers and sisters, those who are listening, when we are faced with situations that make us very angry, remind ourselves with this hadith and the ayat, for the verses of the Quran. Then subhanallah, inshallah, Allah will help us. Allah will help us, and inshallah, say only good words and act only accordingly. Act with the actions that you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it. right? So subhanallah. So my point is that try to continuously, teach yourself, increase the knowledge of Deen, so that inshallah we can understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for us when we actually be patient in dealing with all those around us, our friends, our colleagues, and especially our family members.
Just to add on that, mashallah, on rifq and kindness, right? The one that Shami is mentioning. Actually, right, if you do this professionally, normally you are much more preferred than other people. Do you notice there are certain professional services, you go back to them and you consider them to be better than their peers purely because of their kindness to you? This happens a lot, especially for doctors,
Sahih.
right? Especially for
doctors,
especially for like the ladies, right? When they have their ONG favorites, right? It doesn't. They're not differentiated by their knowledge or their expertise. They are chosen because she listens to me. She's patient with me. She's very calm. She also keeps me calm. So the sometimes the doctors who have this very sharp tongue, they're like they these kind of comments are like, I don't want to see her again lah. And then you think about it, even simple things that all of us can relate, right? If you take a hailing service, right, like Grab or Uber, right? What's most likely going to make you give him a 5-star rating? Most likely the manners, right?
Yes.
Are their driving skills really significantly better than the 4-star drivers? So actually, I relate this back to my job as an engineer also. I mean, I'm probably way behind a lot of my peers when it comes to some technical knowledge. But that people touch, that focus, that the way we deal with people, that's the one that people will remember us, and that's the one that people will enjoy working with us. So actually, it does have a very strong impact professionally also. And at the same time, it's something that Allah is pleased with. So you also get reward in dunya and hereafter. MashaAllah.
Win-win.
Win-win.
MashaAllah.
Win-win.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, I guess another one also I want to add about this, the likable characteristics is humility. There's a saying in Arabic, I don't know how it sounds. It sounds something like, by opposites, something is known. Have you guys heard of this phrase in Arabic?
By having what call it drought, you appreciate rain.
Right, exactly. By tasting the bitter, you appreciate the sweet, right? Okay, so how is being humble more likable? Well, basically, do you like an arrogant guy or not? So now, okay, what is arrogance, right? So Islamically, arrogance, as the Prophet ﷺ described, is batarul haq wa ghamtun nas, rejecting the truth and looking down on people, right? See, now when people are arrogant, generally speaking, they don't make good team players at all, right? Especially when they start looking down on people, they consider themselves to be superior. They are more likely to, number one, impose their opinions, reject other people's ideas, disrespect them, right? Because they're arrogant, right? Less willing to listen to others, even if maybe
that one is bad.
Yeah, that one is the dangerous one, right? Because what other people, they might convey some truth. So this also relates to the first one, right? Batarul haq, right? Rejecting the truth. And the people who have arrogance also, now this is the dangerous one, they are more likely to commit insubordination. They are more likely to disobey people, to question the leader's orders, or even outright reject. And because when they do this, right, they have a impactful social impact to the others. It will inspire others to like, yeah, why do we have to do this? So before that, we were like, yeah, so okay, right? But because of these, these black
this shubha to people, right?
Exactly, shubha. Right.
Bad influence.
Exactly, the toxic guys,
yes.
right? Yeah. So contrast this to the guys who doesn't have arrogance, right? Somebody who's humble. If you have humility, on the other hand, number one, you're more likely to accept constructive criticism. You know you are fallible. You know you have weaknesses. You know you have room to improve. So you're more willing to listen to other people's ideas. So you have the patience, and your humility acknowledges that maybe other people, they have better ideas than me. I'm not perfect, right? I have my limitations, right? And because this humility also makes you more likely to cooperate for the greater good, even if that means you have to probably okay, just bury my opinion first. Maybe there's something that's better that I don't know of, and of course, doesn't mean that if something is wrong, you still have to say it's wrong. But instead of just openly attacking or doubting the leader, what you want to do is you want to politely ask them, have the wisdom to ask them personally, maybe give them suggestions or feedback. This is what humility is about, right? So, if you have this kind of character, isn't that more likable than the loud horn tooting kind of character?
Right.
So I think humility is very, very important.
Mashallah. But especially now, in an age where sometimes the good values are not seen to be good and the bad values are not seen to be bad.
That's true.
Like in the era of fitna that we are in, like sometimes people applause people who are dominant and
Yeah.
voice their opinions in a strong way at work.
Yeah.
These are the values that people let's say play importance nowadays. So that's even more it's even more important to go back to basics and look into the good values, because actually these ones, although maybe temporarily people don't see them as something good or something let's say virtuous, but actually in the long run you will find that these are the ones that will make you successful. Because sometimes in this world that we live in nowadays, the values are jumbled up, I would say,
Yeah, it's true.
right? So
Yeah.
subhanallah. This is my observation, I guess.
I think
Yeah.
one thing of like to be a likable person is like to provide help. If someone asks from you a help, try your best to fulfill that help. And if you can't, at least try your best to link them to who can do it. Yeah. So that's one of the best way of having all these professional affiliates is that you can't do this, but somebody needs that service. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Maybe try asking this person. Yeah. You try your best to at least open up his path to give a solution. Yeah. Try your best to do that.
Yeah, basically this is practicing generosity lah, in simple terms. Just being
Yep.
generous. It's actually a form of sadaqah. In fact, there's a hadith actually that's related to this. The Prophet ﷺ says the people who are most beloved to Allah are those who benefit other people the most. And then he continued further, he said, the most beloved actions to Allah Azza wa Jal are to cause happiness towards a fellow Muslim or to relieve him from hardship. So mashallah, this is actually a form of ibadah.
Mashallah.
And you can foster the relationship. But let's say you help him through another person, you can just come back to, how was it? Did you manage to solve your issue? So that perhaps is the next step to establish a better working relationship, yeah, between both of you.
Yeah. And it forms like a really good opinion on, if everyone does that for each other, how positive that team will be, how
Wow.
that environment will be like a environment of learning, environment of helping each other. So this is something that companies really are looking to inculcate in their work culture.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And just to ground this in hadith as well, the hadith in Al-Bukhari where the Prophet ﷺ said, the translation is, the best of omens are a word of optimism. Have you heard? I think you've heard this hadith, right? It's a bit difficult to translate, but the Prophet ﷺ doesn't like us to talk about bad luck. But when you talk about optimism, thinking, oh, mashallah, I think today is going to be a great day. That kind of optimism and to lift people's spirits up. Actually, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to do that. And actually, right, if you have people like this at the workplace, you also appreciate them. I know one brother, it's always nice to have him around. When you post things, you always go like thumbs up. You say, oh, mashallah, jazakallah khairan. And you're like, oh yeah, you feel excited, right? You're the kind of people that have them around. And actually, if you think about it, right, in Sirah, you have the companions were like this, especially Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Every time the Prophet then he will go, like he'll be the first one forward, right? The Prophet asked them their opinion on Battle of Badr. So he's the first one to speak up. And he's not even like a trained fighter, or he's a businessman, right? Then he's the one who's like, Ya Rasulullah, if you tell us to cross the ocean, we'll cross it for you, something to that effect, So mashallah, and you as the companions, when you hear people like this, you're like, yeah, man, we got this, right? Mashallah. We're human beings, right? So it affects other people around you. So that's what I try to do. So as much as possible, when I'm in certain groups or certain organizations, or even within the workplace, certain WhatsApp groups, when people give some messages, try as much as possible to simple thumbs up or say, yeah, awesome, keep it up, that kind of thing. It doesn't harm us, it doesn't cost us anything. Why not, right?
Being talking about compliment, yeah. Like this is I learned from my seniors. Yeah, like you can actually make the person who compliments you feel much better. So for instance, like you say, hey, Amir, great presentation. Yeah. So instead of just saying thank you, you can say this, like it means a lot to me coming from you. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Man, thanks. I mean, you helped me on and you say, okay, you helped me on this. I mean, share that compliment back to him. That's where I'm trying to go with. Yeah.
I see.
Tai Chi back the
Mashallah.
compliment.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
And I want to share one. I think it's a underrated skill to be likable. Is to be a good listener.
Okay,
Good one.
okay.
You know,
yeah.
sometimes when people ask for our advice, sometimes we like to jump to conclusion or jump to just giving advice without listening empathically. Let him finish his problem or issue first. We always we listen just to reply. We don't listen to understand,
Yeah.
or then we give our opinion. I think I learned this from my previous boss. He was like, he listened to everyone first, and then he would give his idea or he summarized everyone's idea. He was I think the most likable boss I ever worked with. Being good listener, I think, is the most underrated skill right now. People learn to just to give their advice or just to jump into conclusion without listening first.
Sometimes like
Yeah.
this analogy of listening, taking time to listen, churning all this information before giving a reply. Right? Like one way to an analogy to this is like in school. Yeah, when sometimes we have to write karangan. Yeah? The better karangan we write, the karangan is essay. Yeah? The better essay we write is when we have more information. So if people is halfway through their conversation and you stop them and you give your reply straight, actually you're only taking only 50% of the information. So maybe your essay is like not gonna be awesome. If you just hold it for a while, take more information, then perhaps you're gonna give a better response, better reply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, actually, this is a really good point to highlight. The Prophet ﷺ was an excellent listener. So actually, he already taught us the sunnah, actually. And actually, just to reflect also, one of the techniques that I learned from the book, Never Split the Difference, The Art of Negotiating. So one of the key skills of negotiation is active listening. And one of the skills that he teaches is, what does he call it? Mirroring. So I don't know if you read the book. It's a really fantastic strategy. What you do is every time people speak to you, you repeat the last 3 words that they say. And that's all you have to do, right? They might have said 10 sentences, but just repeat the last 3 things. Immediately, that will communicate to them that you've been listening. And then when you do that, actually, they are the ones who will, yeah, exactly. And then they will continue. Or then you continue, you repeat the things, then they will continue. And then, you know what? You understand me.
I
challenge the audience. I challenge the listener to do this. Seriously, it works.
It's
especially to your kids.
Yeah, exactly.
And your spouse.
Exactly. And your spouse.
Something to
exactly.
try.
I just want to say that Brother Faisal, just blow all our tricks, man. Like this repeat the last sentence.
Actually, I blew my cover. But yeah, you're right. Actually, Aziz said a really good point. This is fantastic, especially when it comes to kids. If you want to influence kids, they express their concerns, and you just repeat, oh, I don't want to brush my teeth. You don't want to brush your teeth. Yeah, because this. Then you repeat again, this. And then eventually you can lead them, and then you can influence them to brush their teeth. Oh, how did that? I remember the author of this book, his name is Chris Voss. He said that this trick, this idea about mirroring is so effective that people think like it's some kind of Jedi mind trick. So like, wow, this book teaches you how to be a Jedi, but yeah, it's really, really powerful. You try it, actually, it gives the idea that because human beings, and why is this stated as a negotiating tactic? Because human beings have the desire to be listened to. They want to be heard. So when
they want to feel important, right?
Yes, they want to feel important. Exactly. So when you repeat those last 3 words, you're like, oh, this guy gets me. So then they are more likely to listen up to, okay, Aziz, what do you have to sell?
Yeah. Right. Plus, you need to be sincere. If you you need to be sincere. If you're not sincere, I think our counterpart can sense it, right?
I don't think sincere, because I think to do this takes a toll on you. It's not going to be easy.
Yes.
Sabar,
you're giving
sabar.
Exactly.
Sabar, yeah.
Come back to
You're actually
sabar,
giving
yes.
a lot to them, but sometimes you're giving. If they don't do this, return the favors, you're actually giving excuse like it's okay. I don't need it from you. So actually, at times most of the time it can be one way.
Yes, you're
But
right.
and to be consistent with this actually needs a lot. it has to be tied to a really strong intention, yeah, sincere to Allah's reward on the day of judgment.
Yeah, because if you do this, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you continue this for a while, eventually the thoughts are gonna come. Hey, when is my turn gonna come? Huh? Why is always this guy like going on? What about me? You know. But yeah, to be likable is to kind of like take a step back and inshallah.
And actually be consistent also. Okay, a lot of benefit to that, but also it avoids like let's say if alhamdulillah through Allah's hidayah you're able to maintain this likable personality for a long time. So mashallah, that's good for you. Or the flip side to that is if you're not able to do any of those likable personality, people say, okay, this guy is a toxic guy, yeah. But worse is one day you're likable, the next day you're a monster, the third day you're a monster, the fourth day you're likable. So this guy is a nutcase. So
Okay.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Mashallah. Yeah, I think another one is to make sure we have. I think a key thing about being likable is respect, lah. And I think this is something that's easier said than done. I think one of the the biggest factors I see people are not great team players is because they have this lack of respect for others. So it can come in a few ways. Number one, they are openly disrespectful to others. They are very offensive, openly critical. They insult ideas or opinions. And what this does actually, it creates this aura of distrust. It creates like this feeling of unsafeness to speak up. And this is what the hypocrites used to do. If you look at the narrations of hadith, notice, right, how people like Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, they would openly criticize and insult the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So if you're among that gathering, you're like, oh, okay, I better not say anything. You know, like it discourages you from speaking up. So, and actually I've experienced this firsthand. You remember the guy that I told you, that example of the brilliant guy who is, that kind of character, right? Yeah, that guy, I made an observation, yeah. Every time he enters a meeting, before that, people are like, discussing ideas, chit chat, all these things, right? When he comes in, people are quiet.
So then they become a cave.
Yeah. They become very reserved now. Oh, okay.
Oh.
And people don't realize this. And I'm like, hey, oh, okay. Then when I gave feedback to that person, I said, this is something you got to work on, lah. Because I mean, we don't want to insult, like we want to nasihah, right? So yeah, and then he said, oh, really? That's what happened, yeah. So eventually, mashallah, alhamdulillah, he's improving right now. But yeah, so being disrespectful is actually making you less of a team player. It kind of limits the team's collaborative capacity and their willingness to work with others. So, and then this kind of respect, it opens up to other things like your gender, your race, or principles, and so on. So yeah, I think this is one of the things that we have to train ourselves as well.
That's why I agree. Because if we don't respect anyone, we would not smile to that people. We would not listen to anyone, right? If we don't have respect.
Sometimes it's like because they have such a dominant character, right? They like to dominate meetings, they like to dominate discussion. So they might have really good ideas, but really one idea can never fight with 5 people's idea, yeah, or with 10 people's idea. Like I recently just went to this workshop. Before this, I'm so accustomed to this brainstorming method, but in one particular workshop they do a brain writing, and brain writing, what they do is like nobody speaks, you only write down what are your thoughts. And mashallah, I think even the most reserved introverted gets all the good ideas, yeah.
Okay.
And so in a normal discussion, and all these ideas would never be heard, would never been brought to the discussion because of their nature, yeah.
The loud guys will always dominate, right?
That's right.
Mashallah. I think just one of the things that I want to recommend to everyone out there, to my brothers here and also to the listeners out there, I like to recommend to all of you to get into the habit of volunteering yourself to collaborate with other da'wah or charity organizations. But the key here, right, is don't be selective about what role you will play. Don't consider yourself to be too old or too overqualified. You humble yourself, play any role in that organization. And actually, this is actually how I force myself to develop these team player abilities. I used to volunteer for a lot of different activities. I used to do all sorts of roles, no matter how small, whether it's to be the driver, the one handling registrations, the one who ushers the audiences into the hall, the group facilitator, the speaker, the MC, whatever it is, right? Just do all these roles. And all of these actually I find to be very valuable experiences. Yeah? That you try to just be a good team player, right? Even if you might have better ideas, just collaborate and do what's best. And eventually you develop that muscle. So inshallah, this is something that I think all of us is a practical tip lah, that you can take home.
Right? It's interesting as well because once you expose yourself to different roles, let's say in an organization, you see things that people don't see from their perspective. So automatically when you are in playing your part in another position, you know what that person is experiencing and you know how it is to be in their shoes.
Exactly.
Therefore, there's more empathy, there's more collaboration, there's more likability, you know. So mashallah, this is a good way to train your likable muscles.
Your likable muscles. Actually, that's a really good point, because when you realize later on, when you, let's say, when you get more experience and you start managing the project, right? And then when people come up with a reason why something is delayed or you have challenge, you're like, oh yeah, that is quite difficult. You can empathize. That's opposed to like, this guy excuse, you know.
Correct.
So that makes you a much more likable leader as well in the long run. Mashallah.
Mashallah.
And actually, that's a interesting point that you said, that that's one of the hikmah behind the Prophet ﷺ. He was somebody who always used to do the groundwork, right? When they're digging the trench in Khandaq, right? The Battle of Khandaq, he was the one on the front lines digging the trench, and he was the one tying the stones to his stomach out of hunger, right? He was with them. He wasn't just the guy who's like, okay, you dig over there, you dig over there. Anything you call me at home lah. He's not that. He's the guy who's there in the front lines. And in fact, there's one hadith, I think it's in Al-Bukhari or was it Muslim, where the companions, I think it was Ali who narrated this, which makes it even more amazing. They said when the battle gets really, really difficult, we would try to rally behind our leader, the Prophet ﷺ. But we always find the front lines. He's the one in the thick and thin of the battle. Subhanallah. Right?
Surprising.
Yeah, that's amazing, right?
Mashallah.
So that creates like this empathy. He knows what it's like to be on the front lines. He knows what it's like to be on the ground. So that makes him more likable, because despite all that, he is still, you know, like he is who he is. Mashallah.
Mashallah. Interesting point.
Okay, mashallah. So brother Amir, you wanna?
Okay, yeah. So I just want to share. This is what there was a discussion from Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah about good akhlaq. Yeah. So at the end he says this, like that the impact of good, because to be likable has to come from good akhlaq, and good akhlaq effect way surpass the effect of wealth or power. Yeah. Good akhlaq suppress that, and good akhlaq is a sign of a mu'min and a sense of taqwa. So he quoted a poet, a wise word to his son. Asked, how do you know taqwa? Taqwa is so difficult to see. The poet said, taqwa is difficult to see, but it can be seen from a cheerful face and a soft tongue. So because that will create a lot of happiness in people's heart. So be a likable person. Do not inconvenience, do not bother, do not cause harm to other people. Be the one that's gonna be a help to others, and do it with a cheerful face. That's all I have here.
It's an interesting point as well, actually, because sometimes we feel that good akhlaq is something that precedes, but actually it's a result of you having the iman, the correct iman, the correct taqwa, and that is actually the result of what's in the heart, and it presents in your actions. So how you can have good akhlaq is trying to increase your iman, trying to be closer to Allah. This will inshallah result in your actions being in a better accordance with the Sharia, and you have good akhlaq as a result. So that's one interesting observation.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost as if good akhlaq is a symptom of what's in your heart, which is the taqwa and iman. So the kind words, the nice appearance that you have to other people is a sign that you're doing this because this is what Allah is pleased with. So, mashallah, I think it's a nice way of tying things up in the big perspective.
Maybe I can share a hadith that concludes what the brothers have been talking about. You say that it's a symptom of what's really inside, right? So this is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Laysa al-ghina an kathratil arad, walakin al-ghina ghina an-nafs." He said, the true wealth is not having a lot of possessions, but true wealth is the richness of the soul. So if you have a rich soul, it shows through your limbs. It shows through the words, the choice of words you use, you choose to say, right? And it shows through your helping of other people, and your sadaqah, and your a'mal, your good deeds, your good actions behind closed doors. So all of this, And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows all of this, and it's not gonna be unrewarded.
Okay, so with that, inshallah, we conclude our discussion for today, right? Very good discussion, mashallah. So may Allah Azza wa Jal imbue us with the most beautiful of akhlaq, in becoming among the likable people at our workplace and in da'wah, in our communities, and especially to our family members. Yeah, Ameen.
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 Actually, subhanallah, it's really motivating to know that all these things, at the end of the day, it's something that benefits us in the hereafter. So definitely you'll see this in the dunya, but in the hereafter, Allah will be pleased with it. So mashallah, just have to
Sahih.
correct your intention, doing this for the sake of Allah. Mashallah, you have greater reward to look forward to in the akhirah.
Yeah, because
Inshallah.
usually the book Western ideas about being likable is more to business and worldly
Right.
things, right?
Right, yeah. So with that, we end this discussion, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, wa nastaghfiruka, wa natubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi
warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.